Welcome back to the Lead Lamp Podcast, where we bring on local influencers and just local movers and shakers and just learn a little bit more about them. It's not necessarily about your business. It's just kind of what you're doing in the community and everything else. So this week we got Mike Verber, Dr. Mike Verber on the show, and you're a busy man. So we've got a lot to cover, but we know a lot about you, but we want to kind of give your backstory to the community and just learn about where Dr. Verber started out and where he came from.
Well, I'm a hometown boy. So, I love this area. I grew up in the area. I ended up going to school at Dickinson College and then dental school at Temple Dental and have moved back here. I don't think there was ever any question that I didn't want to be a part of this community, part of Cumberland Valley School District, which I'm very involved in. And, it's come full circle. A lot of things that my parents were involved in, that my parents did, I am now involved in. I love this area so much. I kind of tease my wife and kids. They want to go to spring break. They want to go to Florida or travel or see Europe. And I'm like, I don't know. I love everything about this area.
You're always
I don't even like to get on a plane to go anywhere. I love everything the area has to offer.
The staycation guy.
I'm the staycation guy. Yeah. Although my wife says I don't ever really do that because I can't put down work completely. But my mom and dad moved to this area because my dad was from upstate New York and my mom was from Virginia. So this was like a compromise. So they put down roots here, and my dad had a dental practice, and I ended up going into practice with him, and then things kind of grew from there.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were growing up in the dental practice, was it all your brothers and you guys hanging out where your dad and mom worked?
Well, so,
I'm sure they put you to work. I know you've told me some stories. Pulling weeds, you were pulling
my dad.
weeds.
Yeah, my dad used to say I was allergic to work because we would go to the office, and it was a little kind of row home where the lower level was converted to an office and the second level was an apartment. And my dad would make us do landscaping. And my middle brother, I was the oldest, the one that was just a bit younger than me, would go with my dad and I, and he was a good worker. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure it wasn't that I was a good worker, but I always would try to think of a better way to do it. So he'd get down and start pulling weeds, and I'd be thinking about, how can we do this differently? And I would come home and I'd always get poison ivy, and my mom would yell at him for taking me to do the landscaping, and my dad would say, dang it, he's not allergic to poison ivy, he's allergic to work. But maybe it was just a different kind of work. I would go in and mess around in the dental office a little bit, but really, I don't feel like they ever pushed that on us. The question about being in the office, when they first moved here, we lived in the apartment above. My mom, my dad, and I for a few years. So they opened their office in 1974. I was then born in 1976, and I think they moved out a couple years later. But we still have patients that will say, I remember you running around the office in diapers. I guess I used to sneak down the stairs and run and try to go see my dad.
Run rampant.
Working. Yeah.
That's too funny. So you said 1974, and we're going to kind of go into what you do now. So this is a big year for Verber Family Dentistry and Verber Dental Group because and we could talk about what you do now too, because it's interesting. It's not just dentistry, but it's the 50th year anniversary of Verber Family Dentistry, which is huge.
Yeah, I think that's something that our team should be really proud of. Dentistry has gone through a tremendous amount of change. There are fewer and fewer small solo practitioner, doctor-owned practices, and the what's filling the void is larger venture capital backed corporations that are, they might be owned. The big one used to be owned by a foreign hedge fund. So, it's
and they're not
really
all
crazy.
They're not all Aspen Dental, so they all look the same.
They might be named after the location or keeping the name of the previous dentist, but it doesn't mean the ownership is there. Mm-hmm. So. There were a lot of dentists that were second generation dentists or even third generation dentists. And I believe we're the last one that's still a locally doctor owned practice that's around. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because over the years, a lot of them have called us and asked if we would be interested in merging or buying them. But I think that is something that motivates our team is we see ourselves as the stewards of dentistry in the area. and we're not sure that anybody else is going to do as good of a job as we can because we're from the community we care.
Right. So as the CEO of Verber Dental Group, kind of walk us through, what you do now. We'll go into your journey a little bit later, but kind of what's your day-to-day like at Verber Dental Group and dealing with, the size of the group that we have now?
Yeah, so I've learned, there was a time where things got really complicated and we thought we needed to bring in some more experienced executive help. And it took a turn, like kind of in a direction I don't think the team or the partners really wanted. So I kind of stepped into the more actively managing as CEO of the organization from a business sense. Although I still see patients 2 days a week because I absolutely, love that. And I think it keeps me grounded. But I've learned that being a CEO is a lot different than what I necessarily imagined it. I realized that over the years I've been a pretty good entrepreneur, but being a CEO of an organization that has 250 people and is of the size we are now is a kind of a different role. I kind of say being an entrepreneur is like being a bull. You got to charge ahead and you got to, really take some risks and be, persistent with things. Being a CEO is kind of like being the matador. So, I wrote down like, what does my job entail? Because I had to reflect on that recently. And I think, there's a few things. One, making sure you have the right people in the right seats. Finding a guy like you is always a good thing. And you've done a great job with us. Making sure you have the right culture, making sure you have the right vision, networking and building relationships, being the public face of the company where that's necessary. And then, also making sure you're paying attention to the numbers. So I'm not sure I was always a good numbers guy. I've gotten a lot better at that. But knowing what the numbers, and it's not just money, it's a measurement of how well you're executing. So making sure you're identifying the numbers or the key performance indicators that measure the company's performance, and then making sure we're driving those. Yeah.
It's been even over the last 4 years, it's been a cool thing to watch that change and grow. So it's even so
probably
far,
a little traumatic too for you.
COVID
You've been through a few. Yeah, COVID was interesting.
It's been a roller coaster, but it's been good, and it's it's cool to watch it grow the way it has. Yeah. So I know some of the bumps in the roads that we've seen in the last 4 years, just with the economy and with COVID, and
we should probably explain. You came into the organization helping with marketing, and we're promoted to being our marketing director, and you wear so many hats now. You're the director of marketing, IT, and data, as well as being, our executive director and one of the owners of Leland Media. So you have been at the table or in the war room, as sometimes we describe it, depending on the circumstances. I don't want to go back to the war room. For quite a few. Yeah.
I think I showed you the other week, I have the old, whenever everything was shutting down, I have the old Post-its that we had all around that wall. And I was like, I can't throw these out. Like it's just like it needs to go in an archive, a Verber archive somewhere.
Yeah. When we had a boardroom that we had a group of people, our directors and myself and a partner or two that would meet to decide what to do on a daily basis.
It was literally daily or hourly.
Yeah. Because things are changing so fast. When you look back on that, hindsight being 2020, like what's your takeaway? Like, what would you have done differently?
Yeah. So I don't know if you could Monday morning quarterback that situation, but what was crazy for me was I went from just like basically like a marketing manager in an hour. You guys came back upstairs and you're like, Brett, we need you. And I walked into the room and you're like, so you're a director now and we're going to make decisions here that are like a lot bigger than what they were an hour ago. Cause that was like the day before Tom Wolfe came on and closed everything. Yeah. So it was interesting to kind of be on that fast track of like, okay, well now we got to make some decisions and we don't know what the right answer is or isn't. We just got to make a decision because we can't sit idle in this time.
I mean, the implications were crazy. First of all, I think we're one of the first dental offices to close because we didn't know what was going on there. And also dentistry was being described as the most dangerous profession in the world because when we go in and we treat a patient, we're blowing air and water and creating these aerosols. So we knew it was very safe for the patients, but for our workers in the aerosols that were created
at the time, we didn't know.
we didn't know. Now it turns out it was a very safe environment because we knew how to handle infectious disease, the masks and the disinfectants in the air, things that we've always done worked very well, but we just didn't know.
The clinical staff was preparing.
Yeah, they were talking about COVID living for 12 decades on surfaces and stuff, but
we went through a lot of cavity wipes.
Yeah, we thought the right thing. Thought the right thing to do was close, so we closed, and then now we're taking care of hundreds of employees and families, and we were we're providing their insurance and their income, and it was before we knew what kind of government support was going to be there. We didn't anticipate enhanced unemployment or the funding. So I mean, it was these really big decisions that we were.
I think we navigated it well though, and the group navigated it well at the time because if you look back at it, we brought almost everyone back. It was a very short amount of time that everyone was out. In hindsight, at the time, we didn't know how long it was going to be, but we managed it pretty well, and everyone came back pretty quickly, and the team as a whole came back, pretty much unscathed. So it was pretty awesome.
We came back. I think we were definitely in a good position coming back. I think the roller coaster and getting spun in some different directions with some things that may or may not have been related to COVID is what's turned us around and made things so difficult. But if I look back at that, I think the thing I would do differently is only meet weekly. We were literally meeting
Zoom calls
every day.
8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Zoom call. And
every day things were changing.
Yeah.
Remember, new guidance was coming out with dentistry almost on the daily. And, what do we do with this loan? And,
you didn't know though.
I mean, you didn't know. We thought, okay, this was going to be it, but dang, they changed it again. I would have just probably met less and kind of let things play out a little more. We were so good about staying ahead of things, but sometimes maybe to our detriment a little bit.
Yeah, we came through it though.
My dad who most of our the folks that have been with us a while kind of know pretty well. He has a thing that he says, you always worry about the wrong thing. So, and I think I've shared that about with you because you like to worry. You're nervous, Nelly, but you always worry about the wrong thing. And that when you're meeting every day, you're probably worrying about the wrong thing.
Yeah, it was hyper focus, but it worked. It's what we had to do.
Survived. We're still here.
Yeah. All right. So let's get back on track. So what do you think was back onto dentistry? What made, short of your dad being a dentist as well, what made you decide, and what was that moment where you were like, this is cool, this is what I want to do? Being a doctor obviously comes with other benefits as far as salaries and everything else, but dentistry itself, there's got to be something that's ticking that keeps you wanting to provide that service and care to people. So what is that fuels that engine for you?
Well, so dentistry, I was reluctant, I think, to do what my dad did. I was reluctant just to follow in his footsteps. So I went to school, and in the back of my mind, I said, dentistry is going to be an option. But I was actually a history major. So I was thinking, well, maybe I'll become a professor, or maybe I'll go into law, or law enforcement actually was something I was thinking about. And I kept trying on these different things, and nothing really stuck. So around the end of my sophomore year in college, I said, well, let's make the plan dentistry and see if that sticks. And it just did. There's so many different aspects to it that I think, there's the design aspect, and I love, seeing the patients and working with staff closely. And I love the idea that I can see what I accomplish at the end of the day. You do a lot of, when I'm doing the business side of things, you're sending out these emails, you're making these plans. It just takes a long time to put points on the board. Whereas in dentistry, people go home and you can just really see what we've accomplished. But the other thing is, dentistry demands that you're hyper-focused. So that hyper-focus, it's the only time my brain is not going, 8 million miles an hour. So that, when I'm at work and I'm doing dentistry and I'm hyper-focused, it's relaxing for me.
It's almost like an artist where they say, when they're painting or they're doing whatever, they're shutting off everything else, and now they're just working on, that's their piece of art. And it really is, what you do too is a work of art too with people's smiles and how you can turn, there's a lot of cases. We have them as examples on the websites is people who feel like they're in, dire straits with their smile. And then 6 months, a year later have these cases
we're just so
beautiful.
We're so fortunate that regardless of what the patient comes in,
Mm-hmm.
I can create the smile that they want because, I work in a specialty center where we have excellent surgeons that can do implant stuff. And we can put people under general anesthesia. We can, do the gums because we have the periodontist. I have the endodontist there. Like I'm really living in a dental dreamland.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is we have our own dental lab. So I work very closely with them. And my wife is we have a couple really good, a number of really good designers and good porcelain techs and good denture techs. But my wife does a lot of the designing. So everything's kind of computer driven. And she's a phenomenal artist. So I just love working on cases with her and the other techs. But there's a story there. So Kelly and I have always worked well together. At least I think we work well together. Maybe she wants to get a little space sometimes. But my mom used to do all the books for the office.
Mm-hmm.
She used to do the business side of things and pay some of the bills. So Kelly was an x-ray technician that worked in a hospital and a trauma center. And when she was pregnant with our first daughter, Vivian, she was called out in the middle of the night in a snowstorm. And I say, I don't think this is going to work. Why don't, my mom wanted to kind of slow down. Why don't you take my mom's job? So there was 2 or 3 dentists at the time. And, it was something that, the idea was she can work part-time and, be home a little bit with the kids and stuff. Of course, then we started growing. So I said, well, now you're our CFO.
That was when we were still VFD.
Yeah, we
VFD.
were still at the one office. But I think that ran through till we got to 3 or 4 offices. But so she was doing all the business side of stuff in the HR and all this. I mean, basically her and I were managing all the administrative stuff. And
that's a lot of small businesses go through that, where you have the wife or a family member doing bookkeeping and all these other things. And once you hit that, there's that threshold, there's a tipping point where you realize, okay, now it's not that Kelly couldn't or shouldn't be doing it, but it's too much now.
Well, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So you think you're doing HR right. You're not. You're doing it completely wrong. You're thinking you're doing finance right. You're not. You're doing it completely wrong. But yes, that was one of the more difficult things where we were 5 or 6 dentists, but we couldn't afford administrative help yet. And those were the days where I was working till 7 or 8 o'clock every night. I wasn't home to see my kids at dinner or anything. That was, that's the big sacrifice you make to get there. And now we're there and we do have that kind of help. But we were coming home from the beach one year and we had a week off and I was all excited to get back to work. I love what I do. And I'm telling Kelly and she's just sitting there. And I guess I'm completely oblivious to the fact that she's not excited to get back to work. So she breaks out bawling, crying, really upset, like has to pull the car over. She always drives, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm a better passenger than she is. And she's a better driver than I am, but she pulls the car over. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, I hate my job. And I'm like, well, okay, at least it's not that, at least you don't hate your marriage. It's not me, it's just the work. So we moved her to become a dental assistant. She was having some back issues. So we said, well, why don't you try doing some lab work? And she started doing some things and then the pandemic happened and she was doing chalk drawings on the driveway, just to entertain the neighbors that were walking. And she it was like, holy mackerel. She's like amazing. So we moved her into doing the design stuff. And she still does some of the chalk drawings, but she does a lot of the artistic outlets with designing smiles.
Yeah. I remember the lab growth even over the last 4 years. And it's tremendous to see that because it went from a dinky little tiny room. You had the other Brett was in there. We, it was a tight little room, and now they have that whole. They've kicked us out of the basement where marketing used to be, and now it floods the whole basement practically.
Yeah, the lab has been great because it really allows us control. So we can deliver the kind of we're not getting our crowns from China. Not that necessarily is a horrible crown, but it's we can deliver the kind of work that we want to do for our patients, but it also allows me, I work with the lab, I'm able to go in and look at the work that's being done in our offices. And if there's something that, we can approve. We can work with the dentists or the assistants or our team members to
You can
monitor its
train
quality
them
control.
yeah.
We see what's happening in the offices that way.
Yeah. And it's nice to also, when you have your more extensive cases, be there and actually communicate directly with whatever needs done versus, lines of communications overseas or even across the country.
Yeah, our lab techs will come into the offices.
They deliver right there. Yeah,
they deliver, but they also come in for some of the procedures. Sometimes they meet the patients, understand what the patient wants. It's great.
Okay, so let's pivot again. So back to Dr. Verber and what you've built. Obviously, people in our community in the Cumberland Valley area know, this dental, not an empire, but this dental group that we have is now big. And I think a lot of people don't realize when they first start going to one of our practices, they go to Search Dental or they go somewhere else and they think it's part of Search Dental. And then they realize, oh, wow, this is actually a larger group. There's a huge benefit to the patients with that as well. Not having to be jostled around and referred to other offices for specialty stuff and anything else they want.
Yeah. So our vision, in this.
Yeah, kind of talk about that inspiration because I've heard that story of, Mac and how you wanted to provide that, but that was for pediatric dentistry. But really, I think that folds into everything.
Yeah. Mac is a little boy that couldn't get the help he needed in the area. And there's other patients that way, or there's frustrations where we were working with some specialists outside the group, oral surgeons, where, just the costs and the redundancy and the communication was so difficult. So I think, my partners and I looked at this and said, this dentistry is broken. Like, this could be better. And it's remarkable that it's not. Like, we have what we call a dental health system. The big dental companies, they don't connect offices. They're not really collaborative. They're doing business economies of scale, whether it's leveraging buying power.
They're connected at the bank.
They're connected. But they're not exactly. The shareholders are connecting them. They're not connected. One office owned by, a big dental corporation might be competing with another office that's 2 miles down the road. So rather than business economies of scale, we always focused on clinical economies of scale for our patients. So if a patient comes in to, get their teeth cleaned, and then they find that they need something that might involve a root canal doctor, an endodontist, or a periodontist, or an oral surgeon, or a or an orthodontist. We have all that, and it's all the same dental health records. So no matter what office you're at, the specialist
it's available.
Can look up at the X-rays that were taken at that hygiene exam, or read the hygienist notes. So it definitely drives a higher quality of care, I believe. It's super convenient for the patient. They love not having to go fill out 17 new forms and all that kind of stuff. We could schedule them right into they don't have to call to make the scheduling. But the other unique thing is that there's nobody that owns a part of this group that isn't seeing patients. So, and myself included. So I definitely think the decisions that we make are grounded in what it's going to be for the patients and for the team working in the office.
Clinical care and patient care first, and then
we actually say it's team first.
Team first, yeah.
Which was a paradigm shift for us. But I finally understood that. I could say, hey, we're going to be patient first, but the care that the patient gets is going to be dependent on the team. So if you can keep good team members and recruit and retain good team members, the care to the patients is going to be there.
But it is refreshing knowing that the people at the table making business decisions are doing so without having to sacrifice patient care. So, it's a fantastic model to see and learn more about when you see that most companies are going the other direction and they're just going by the bottom line for everything.
Yeah, and it's a difficult environment, so I don't, I understand where they're struggling, but yeah.
So back onto Dr. Verber, say, what are some values that you think that you have that carry well through, what the organization reflects as well? So things that, you live your life by that you like to see executed and are executed well within your group.
Well, I'm starting to understand that it can't just be my values. Right. that it has to be my partner's values and our team's values. So, I am so passionate about the community, and I think those values are shared in there. But I'm also kind of I'm very persistent, and I'm a workaholic, and I don't give up on things, and and I tolerate a lot of risk.
Mm-hmm.
So not all of my partners want to take every risk and go after every opportunity, and even if it means that we're going to have to work 7 days a week. I'm recognizing that there are people that want to do those things, and there are people that want to work 3 days a week and are in a position to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to we can do that for everybody, but it's going to require some organizational balance. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely learning that. But I think the core values that we have as a company at Verber Dental Group, which are empower, be positive, and be kind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very positive person, and I love the idea of empowering people. So aside from the dental group having partners that are providers that work here, one of the things that I'm most pleased about is like Lead Lamp Media. So Lead Lamp Media started as a few great employees of Verber Dental Group. We realized how great you were. We started your own company, and look at where you're taking it. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. So to be partners with you and with the other folks at Lead Lamp Media to empower people that way. We've done the same thing with a real estate management company, and where we have a number of different properties that some of our employees are invested in. You and I are real estate partners.
Yep.
So those are things that I think I love, and that's the empower part. And then the be kind, that's something I think I'm a good person, but sometimes I have to focus on the kindness. Like I in the past have been a very direct person. Like if I don't like something, I just tell you, and we can have a fight, and I'm like, we're going to have a fight so we can get to the bottom of it and figure out what's the best thing. But I think sometimes it's too aggressive for some people. Like, you've seen me take more aggressive stance, and I think that can be scarring for some people. So I'm realizing there's a softer approach.
Mm-hmm.
So that's,
there's a time and a place for all of that, though.
Yeah. But sometimes telling it like it is, sometimes dialing things down
when you learn
and going a little bit more gradually,
you learn you can get your way, or not get your way, but you can get to the end result of what needs to be done, not just through brute force. Then as an organization, I think we're learning too that there's other ways to do the same thing.
Yeah. I love a good argument. Because I want you to change my mind. You know what I mean? Like, I think things are a certain way, and I want to have a confrontation, and I feel like the best result will be yielded from that. But what I'm learning is, first of all, I'm the CEO of the company, right? Mm-hmm. So I have this advantage, the scales aren't balanced to begin with. And then, I'm 6'6", I'm 360 pounds. I argue well, I'm loud. And, I look back and I go, shit, that wasn't a fair fight. Like, did I miss something because I wasn't listening? So kindness is a very important approach, because, I am listening better, and I do, hopefully, and I realize I'm changing my mind a little bit.
I think the key there for everyone is just listening better, for anybody. Like, if you just take time, my wife would probably say I need to do a better job of that all the time, but like just listening to anyone, whether it's a family member, a friend, someone you work with, that can usually solve or get to the root of the problem quicker than, doing it the harder way.
Yeah. And not having to make, I like to be deliberate and make, expedite decisions, but kind of slowing down a little bit too. So, I found like a lot of times I'd have this argument, and then I'd lay in bed thinking about it, and then I'd realize, oh, that was the point that somebody was making, or, oh, I get it. And then I come back and change it. And, I think people would appreciate that. But the problem was like the trauma of the argument for some people. Yeah. I was having a great time with it. I love a good fight.
You're a debate guy.
Yeah.
Now, did you do debates in school, or were you a debater even when you were younger? Would you just... you would lock
Well, I
in
think
on
if you
debate
asked
or
most of
something?
my teachers, they would say I was debating them all along, but I was never formally in debate club.
Okay. Okay.
I think I was always debating.
That's fair. So let's talk about that while we're on there. So what do you think when you look back at, what you've done now, your 10-year-old self or the child version of yourself would think about, where you're at, whether it's professionally or where you're at with your family, anything like that, that
Well,
reflection.
I think the first thing they'd say is, shit, we didn't lose the baby fat. Although I did for a while when I was playing sports. But no, I think, it's an interesting way to put that question, because when I was 10 years old, I'm not sure I was, concerned about anything beyond Twinkies and
that's true.
like doing the moonwalk like Michael Jackson. But I think I am over the moon with where I'm at, and very fortunate with my life. I think I've gotten to where I'm at because I've just had, I have had incredible parents that were super supportive. I've had incredible mentors along the way. I mean, some of the most famous dentists in the world, just by luck, I've come to teach with or be around and learn from. So that's changed my career drastically. And then I just have had I have the greatest wife in the world for me. She's just amazing the way she's supported me and all that. So, my wife and Kelly and I were watching Sopranos. She'd never seen it.
Which is an awesome
great show. She's never seen it. But of course, it's the story of this mob boss that has kind of some mental breakdown and starts to see a therapist. So she sees the first episode, and the Tony Soprano, the mob boss, is in his backyard grilling, families around, and there's the ducks in the pond. And he's so happy. And then the ducks leave, and that's what starts like the spiral of depression. So I think I didn't have the depression moment yet, but I came home the other day, and we renovated a house, and it's everything I've always wanted. And it's got a little bit of space. And, I have two daughters, Vivian and Charlie, that are just doing really well, 7th and 8th grade. And they're just, I love being around them. But I pull into this, and it had just snowed, right? Like the first snow in 2 years. I pull into my driveway and kind of have this long driveway. And right there, like on my driveway, there's like 4 or 5 really big deer just standing there. And I'm the headlights, I'm 10 yards away from them. The headlights, they're just looking at me. And it's it was kind of like that Tony Soprano duck moment. I was like, oh my God, this is how freaking lucky am I to be living here, to come home to this. And then, then I open the door, and Rudy, my dog, runs out and chases the deer, and he's barking like a madman. And, my kids are home. We're eating dinner. Everything is just there. And then professionally, it's what my partners and team have been able to do. I feel really, really good about it. It's been hard. These last 3 years have been very, very difficult. I feel like, from a business sense, it's been really, really difficult. But, I sat down with my one partner the other day, and we were having lunch, and we're talking about, financially, the costs going up, and, insurance reimbursements has been very stagnant. How are we, what are we going to do? And I said, even if we don't financially ever, realize the benefits of ownership, at the end of the day, as long as we can kind of continue to do what we're doing here, at the end of the day, you got to feel great about what we've done, for our community and for our team and for our patients. So it's exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, 10-year-old might be too young to think about that, but it is.
It's a good question.
It's a good question to get you thinking.
What did you want to do when you're 10 years old?
This is really geeky, and you're probably not going to be surprised, but I wanted to be an architect from 10, young. I was blown away by architectural drawings and things like that. So you probably aren't surprised, because that's how my brain's wired.
Well, you build all those little model things and everything that are crazy, amazing. I'm always amazed about all the different talents.
I think that's what set me off on that.
But architect was on my list for a while.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think I just didn't it didn't stick because I didn't have like a clear path on how to do it. I was in a liberal arts college. I was at Dickinson. But when we build buildings, I love getting in there and drawing things and doing
and you
design.
like to get involved in like the colors and design selection. And you do a good job of it. It's when the offices are finished, they are almost breathtaking when you walk into them. So and the hard part about this now is you have to make the next one better than the last one. Or, you don't have to, but like it becomes a challenge of like, okay, what are we going to do at this next office? So it's been fun to watch those designs come together.
Yeah, that's another lesson I'm learning though too. It's like not everything can be a home run.
Doesn't have to be
like you keep trying to outdo yourself. Yeah, but it's been
okay.
It's been I think I've been afforded an opportunity to do follow different passions. So like that's building things is definitely something I've liked to do.
Not just building things physically, but building things as a business. It's not always material, but you're good at building organizations or groups of people as well, and assembling the right teams. Might take a journey to get there, but we get to the right teams on a lot of those practices and businesses we've started up. But the other thing that I think I wanted to tap into, and we've talked about this before too, but if you have advice for people that are out there that are just kind of on the fence about starting something, you're pretty aggressive, as you said, with starting businesses or running with ideas. But what's something that you would tell someone almost like myself who tends to be a little bit more conservative if they have an idea, is just like, get started and do that thing, because next year is always a better time in your head now, but next year you probably will wish you started. So you're a good example of that because you just go right into it. So what would you tell someone in that situation?
Well, I'll tell you something. Again, getting back to my parents, it's unfair for me to kind of just say, go all out.
Yeah.
Because I had this safety net. My dad was a dentist, and, they were by no means like crazy wealthy, but there were times where I swung and missed, and, I didn't feel the pain because I had a backstop there. But, calculated, you got to take risk. I mean, I think we fail to realize how much runway we have ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like your mistakes become experience. It just becomes more valuable. I mean, I've had businesses that I put hundreds of thousands of dollars into and failed in no time, in months, and I mean, I remember there was one business, it was a dental whitening distributor and teeth whitening. And, we probably lost $100,000, but I remember I sat down and I wrote 50 lessons. I said, what are the 50 things I learned here? Mm-hmm. I don't think I sat down saying 50, but it turned out to be 50. I mean, and I feel like that made me a better business person. Mm-hmm. But, and it's not for everybody.
Right.
There are people that are just going to be happier, waking up in the morning, doing something that they're passionate about during the day, and then going home and not worrying about it. When you own a business, you're working all the time. Even when you're with your family, you're thinking about it, right?
Yep.
But if that's what you want to do, there's nothing more satisfying. And, I would say, first understand what your purpose is. I think clearly I wanted to come and impact my community using, dentistry, not only through dentistry, but building an organization that can impact the community.
It became a tool.
Yeah, it definitely has. And then, I think if you have a purpose, then you need to make a vision, so, map that out. What does it look like? And then I think you take, we have brand promises. So how are we going to do what we set out to do? Mm-hmm. One of our number one brand promise is relationships first. So, we're very particular about who we buy from. We don't buy the cheapest gloves. We buy the gloves from the people that we have a good relationship with. So, what are your brand promises and what are your core values? So the brand promises are more for the external stuff. Like, how are you going to treat your customers? How are you going to treat the people you're interacting with outside the organization? Mm-hmm. Your core values are what's inside the organization. And then after that, just persistence. Just persistence.
Keep going back to it.
Yeah. You just have to be persistent.
Okay. Do you have anything else you wanted to share? I mean, we could probably go on for another hour and a half or more just about, things we've learned and gone along the way, even on the last 4 or 5 years. But any closing thoughts or arguments? Don't argue. We're not arguing.
Yeah. But we can argue now.
Any closing thoughts you just had before we wrap up?
It's people and numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I was always so people oriented. And I realized that if you don't take care of the numbers, you can't take care of the people.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't take care of the people, you're not going to have any numbers.
It's like a seesaw.
Yeah.
You have to have a good balance on that.
But again, I've just been very fortunate. I think meeting Kelly, it's the one piece of advice they don't give you in business school is, choose your life partner really wisely. I think you can be successful. You can't be successful with the wrong partner.
It's a bad foundation to build on then. So, and I feel the same way now. We're 2 years now into Lead Lamp, and Kristen has dealt with plenty of me, missing a couple things, doing work at the table when I should be eating dinner or whatever it is. And she knows, it's a sacrifice, but you have to also have that moment where they step in and go, all right, you're closing that. Exactly. And we're going to go to basketball, or we're going to go to kids dance recital. Cause she has to be my balance on the other side of it, going like, you're done today.
Yeah. I think our wives are similar, and they're our motivation for wanting to be great and do things. They're also willing to sacrifice, but then they're also, like my wife raised my kids until they were 5. I got to the point where now I'm very active as a father, but until they were 5 years old and we were building that company, I wasn't around. That she took that sacrifice. But at the same time, then they're the rumble strips that keep you on course.
It's a danger.
So yeah.
Yeah,
And then just, make sure you're working with, I have been so fortunate in the office and on the business side to work with, just really great people. So
right people, right place. Cool. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you
for your time today.